Now, the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Columbus and Jim Geraghty.
Mr. Columbus is off. You've got me, Chad Benson, all week long. Jim Geraghty is here with us, and as you know, you get three, not one, not two, but three martinis, and we're going to start with good news, potentially great news. Jim, about that thing they call a vaccine and us getting back to a normal way of life. Tell us, we've got some news on the horizon that's great.
Yeah, it's a very lengthy essay by longtime New York Times reporter Donald G. McNeil Jr., who's been on the pandemics and epidemics beat for the Times going back to the days of Ebola and such. And it's a very lengthy piece, and he lays out a compelling and I would say a very realistic case for optimism in our fight against the coronavirus. Quote, events have moved faster than I thought. Actually, worth noting, he describes himself as a consistently gloomy Cassandra, reporting on the catastrophe that experts saw coming, that the virus was going to go pandemic, that Americans were going to die in large numbers, the national lockdown was going to last well beyond Easter and past summer, and no miracle cure was on the horizon. He now writes that events have moved faster than I thought possible. I have become cautiously optimistic. Experts are saying with genuine confidence that the pandemic in the United States will be over far sooner than they expected, possibly by the middle of next year. And for those who are, saying, once Biden's elected, they'll say it went away. No, that's not the factor he's saying. He points out that Operation Warp Speed, which is the administration's effort to subsidize vaccine companies' clinical trials and manufacturing costs in an effort to get a vaccine to the American public as fast as possible. He says it's working with remarkable efficiency. It has put more than $11 billion into 7 vaccine candidates, and the FDA said it will approve any of them that are at least 50% effective. And obviously, you're hoping they're much more effective. Operation Warp Speed is now thinking that they have some of the candidates will work 75 to 90% of the time, and he thinks 2 will win approval by early January. And for those of you maybe leaning forward in your thing, that means that probably by early January, the factories that are already under contract and are already producing things will have enough vaccine for 30 to 40 million people. And as you suddenly start leaning forward, that's a great start, but we still have 330 million Americans. He then thinks once everybody gets their factories set up to produce it, they'll be able to produce 80 to 90 million more doses each month. So you add that up, you look at it, late spring, early summer of next year, this pandemic could be over. And that is about as good news as we possibly could hope. It was kind of the rough timeline people were expecting / hoping for. Now it's worth noting that there was a setback in the trial put forth by Johnson & Johnson. You may recall they had a similar bump in the road in the Oxford vaccine. They figured out that person who was gotten sick in the trial was not getting sick because of the vaccine, and they resumed it, and things are moving forward on that front. Now, this is, for those of you who are tired of this, who are tired of social distancing, tired of being told to wear masks, tired of not being able to go to full capacity football games and not wanting to watch NBA games in a bubble and wanting to go to the movies and get on planes and all that stuff. The end is in sight. We're not there yet, but it is in sight. We are, just one more slog, and we should be okay with this by the beginning of this year. And we can leave this awful year of 2020 behind us.
Absolutely. And like you said, he's more Debbie Downer. I mean, he's kind of the realist that there's no positivity that comes out of him. He's just going to give it to you straight without the rah-rah. And if you've got somebody who is very real about something like that and kind of blunt that, hey, everything's bad, kind of like Eeyore, and saying, hey, that you know what, they surprised me. We're actually going to get out of this thing a little bit quicker. That's a win.
Indeed, it may if this all comes to pass. By the way, let's also point out that, and again, you don't want to. Maybe it's a sense of you don't want to count your chickens before they hatch. But if this comes to pass, as he writes, you can love the Trump administration for the tax cuts. You can love them for defense buildup, Supreme Court, stuff. But I think going from effectively zero to a functional vaccine in 1 year will be the Trump administration's greatest accomplishment. Operation Warp Speed will be what they talk about in the history books when a whole bunch of stuff has been forgotten. And I think it's really significant. And I think if the Trump administration, if Trump is worried about his reelection bid, maybe you want to talk about Operation Warp Speed. And you don't need to do a lot of superlatives and wild rhetoric about it. Just bring out and have them give updates. And I think that would make a lot of Americans feel much more confident about the future.
Yeah, but the history books will be written by a lot of other people on the left, and they'll say, Biden did it single-handedly when he got in there. Jim, you know that. Come on now. All right, we go from the good to the bad. Court packing. And, there's different ways you court pack now. Even if you have 9, you court pack it with the people that you want to put in there. So that's automatically bad. But it's not like it's not the first time. 1860s was the last time we maneuvered, a different number, and that became the 9. But before they thought about court packing, and even when the Democrats had everything, it was a no-go.
President Roosevelt clearly had the right to send to the United States Senate and the United States Congress a proposal to pack the court. It was totally within his right to do that. He violated no law. He was legalistically absolutely correct. But it was a bonehead idea. It was a terrible, terrible mistake to make, and it put in question, for an entire decade, the independence of the most significant body, including the Congress, in my view, the most significant body in this country, the Supreme Court of the United States of America. The president had the right to do that. He was totally within his power, and his objective was seen clearly.
Yeah, first of all, it's kind of fascinating when you hear Biden from the 1980s, how different he sounds and how much you can tell. So all this point about, he hasn't lost a step and all that stuff. Look, we remember what Biden usually sounds like. He doesn't sound like that these days. And then just generally his comment that he said in an interview Monday with, ironically, WKRC in Cincinnati, not WKRP. He said, I've already spoken on. I'm not a fan of court packing, but I don't want to get off on that whole issue. I want to keep focused. Well, I suppose we could take a certain amount of reassurance from this, but the fact that if he's not a fan, and somebody asks, "Are you going to pack the court?" he could say, "No, I'm not." And he has not said that. He has not said that when he's been asked about it over and over and over again. He didn't say it in the debate. Kamala Harris didn't say it in the debate. So when somebody's not a fan, but they're not willing to rule it out, I don't think you should rule out the possibility that they will go down this road sometime. And I think, by the way, this doesn't speak very well of Biden, that if he thinks this is a bad idea, but he's effectively being pressured into it, and he's, basically feels he can't say that he thinks it's a bad idea because of the way the people in his party feel. All the people out there who didn't vote for Bernie Sanders and who think the Democrats are too left, but they want to vote for Joe Biden because they're just so fed up with Donald Trump and they're so fed up with that. This is a giant flaw in this, that Joe Biden has already demonstrated on a whole bunch of issues that he's willing to change his mind. He's already demonstrated on a bunch of issues, like the relatively meager objections he had to abortion before. Poof, they went away as soon as he started running for president. Joe Biden can be pushed around. Joe Biden can be pushed into a more leftward direction than his instincts say he should go in. So, first of all, the Trump administration should be jumping all over this. And two, I think it's an ominous indicator for, if elected, what kind of a president Joe Biden would be.
When that whole court packing thing, Jim, is very interesting because what the other side and the Democrats of all, because remember, Harry Reid, when he did nuclear option, everybody, even people inside of the Democratic Party said, I have a feeling we're going to regret this. Are we going to run into an instance where we're just going to see this thing go from 9 to 190?
I certainly hope not, but I think it is likely. It's possible. Look, there are a handful of Senate Democrats who've said they are not fans of this. Kyrsten Sinema, Joe Manchin, and like one or two others have said they don't think it's a good idea. Now, look, Democrats win the Senate. You're going to see an enormous amount of pressure put on the quote unquote moderate Democratic senators. You don't want to be that last Democratic senator who stands between them and what they perceive to be a Supreme Court that will vote their way on every case. So I don't think you should, put all of your eggs in the basket of Joe Manchin being the one who will stop this. And then the second thing is, so let's say they expand it from 9 to 11. I assume they would want it to be an odd number because you wouldn't want to have, a 5-5 split or something like that. So, okay, well then Republicans, next time they have control of the Senate and they have the presidency, they're going to say, all right, we want to have 13. And, you know what, maybe let's do a little extra insurance. Let's add 15. And then all of a sudden, you start having to hold your court cases in MCI Center because there are just so many Supreme Court justices that have been confirmed through. it's been fascinating to watch how many times people say, if you change the rules because you have the power now, the next time the other side has that power, they're going to do the exact same thing. And very rarely have Democratic leaders recognized this. And the interesting thing is that not that long ago, Amy Klobuchar was saying that, eliminating the filibuster for judicial nominees on lower courts was a bad idea. And that all of a sudden now she's not having that. That is one of those things where even when, common sense starts to grip them, eventually the political pressure of their angry grassroots ends up, overwhelming that sense of objection. So again, if this was really so unthinkable and Democrats were not going to do this, they would say so, which means this is within the realm of possibility if Democrats control the Senate.
Hey guys, it's Mock and Daisy from the Chicks on the Right, and we're excited to tell you about our podcast, the Mock and Daisy Common Sense Cast.
If you've been stressed lately with the information overload on social media or just don't feel like anything in the news makes sense anymore, don't worry, because we're here to clear things up.
Every week, we discuss topics like cancel culture, national crisis, what's happening to our new generations, and if you're just plain tired of people trying to tell you what to do or how to live your life, we tackle that too.
Find out more by going to our website, chicksontheright.com, or start listening on the Apple Podcast app, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Don't forget to leave a comment or review and subscribe.
We've had the good, we've had the bad, we've had the crazy, and, you know what? Gallup says more people feel they're better off by a decent margin, 50%, 56% than they were 4 years ago, meaning they're better off now than they were with Trump being president, and Biden has a bizarre yet usual Biden-like response.
Well, if they think that, they probably shouldn't. They think 54% of American people are better off economically today than they were in our administration. Well, their memory is not very good, quite frankly. And in addition to that, we have a president who doesn't share the values of most Americans. He's not very honest with people. He is flouting the conventions relative to public safety in terms of even now not wearing a mask.
Probably once a day, I could run the headline, Joe Biden says something baffling. Yesterday, he said he got in trouble. He couldn't remember. It seems like he couldn't remember Romney's name. So he referred to the senator, the guy who was Mormon, who used to be governor. And we eventually all figured out who he was talking to. But the great irony is that of all the gaffes Joe Biden has ever had, I don't remember him actually getting in trouble for discussing Romney's Mormonism back in the 2012 cycle. And in fact, I went back and checked. The only time I saw Biden had talked about him, he said you shouldn't judge someone's qualification for office based on their religion. This is the one time Biden said what he was supposed to have said, and he remembers it as getting in trouble. It's kind of interesting. But so on this one, he's basically saying that the 56% of Americans who say they're better off now than they were 4 years ago shouldn't vote for him. Now I'm good at math. And I can figure out if 56% of Americans don't vote for you, you're probably in trouble. You need some scenario like Bill Clinton with the opposition vote being split between Bush and Perot to win the presidency in circumstances like that. But what's kind of really intriguing about that is that poll result is actually not good for President Trump. It means, a decent majority of Americans think they are doing better off, and they're so angry with the president over his personality, over the things he says, over the things he does. But even though, I assume that perception is fueled by 3 years of really solid economic growth, including wage growth for the lowest earners, that despite all that, they still can't say, give me 4 more years of this guy. I find him and his persona that repellent. So in a way, this is good news for Biden. But Biden is saying, hey, if you're voting for that, I don't want you. He's saying no. So again, Again, the eternal headline, Biden says something baffling.
Yeah, every day he says something baffling. Yesterday he said again, I think if I remember correct, it just all runs into one another nowadays with COVID and the election that, he's continuing to run for the Senate, which people are like, what? Whatever. I mean, at this point, I don't think we know. We'll find out on a daily basis what he says. That's Jim Geraghty, and I am Chad Benson. This has been your Three Martini Lunch. I'm in for Greg Columbus. I'll be back next week. Follow me at Chad Benson Show on the old Twitter and Instagram. And Jim, where do they follow you at?
On Twitter, it's at Jim Geraghty. I have an Instagram account by that same thing, but it's mostly like wildlife photography and pretty pictures. It's not, political stuff. And of course, at National Review and in the Corner and the Morning Jolt newsletter.